Hello and welcome to this evening's video for Tuesday the 22nd day of October 2013. My name is Derek, and two totally different topics for today's video. The first one, some technical chart analysis on silver, looking at the weekly and the daily charts. After I'm done that, totally different subject, hockey handicapping. There's two games that will take place on Wednesday. So we'll go through them, see if there is an edge on either side. Therefore, if you are one of the subscribers looking for the silver charts, if you have no interest in the second part, we'll just shut the video off when I'm done the charts. If you used a YouTube or Google search and found this video because you want to learn how to handicap hockey, well, I'll start off within the charts. But it's pretty much the same thing, because as I go over the silver stuff, economic situation, and you want to have an edge, well, you're handicapping the monetary system, of course, to have an edge. And when you understand the fiat currency system, pretty easy how to play it. So let's get started. We'll start within the weekly chart for silver. Each one of these periods represents one full week. There's 100 periods within it, so it's pretty close to a 2-year duration within the chart, which the start of it was in a sideways range, and even longer before that, a range mainly between 26 and about 37. And then, of course, you had the breakdown, and it's looking as if maybe it's trying to reverse the trend. You've had this breakout upon here after it was in this large declining situation. What I like to see for a reversal is you break above it, which occurred in here, find support within the band, and it has for a month and a half. And then when you break resistance, there's resistance in here. You can now state it looks like a new trend is in play, which of course would be an uptrend. Let's look at the polar opposite of this. Well, first off in here, you can see it broke above it, found support, but didn't break resistance. On the other side, you break below, you find resistance within it. There's the resistance. And then you break support, which was right in here. There's the trend that brought the price action lower. Oftentimes, when you have a move that looks like it's going to go one way and it doesn't do the other thing, that means you have the move here and it starts to break down. Failed moves can oftentimes create fast moves. But then you got to ask yourself, how long are we going to be in this bear market for? It's been a long time, but who knows? Maybe it could be longer, but the trends will reverse. Now let's switch this on to the daily chart. I'm going to explain a double top and a double bottom now. A double top is where you go up and then back down. And then you go back up close to where the previous high was. And then you go back down to where your previous level is. So a double bottom, and this is a double top is a bearish, a double bottom is bullish, which is the exact opposite. You go down and up. You go down close to where you were, and then you go in here. Once you break resistance, then it's starting to look bullish, and that's exactly what we have in here. You have the first move down here to the top, a move very close again, and today it has broken the resistance level. Also within Fibonacci analysis, which is Fibonacci is why we call it that is because when you take the numbers, you start with 0 and 1, then you add the previous number. 0 plus 1 is 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, and then the pattern goes on, so on and so forth. When you take these numbers that get bigger, 13, 21, 34, 55, 89, and you divide these numbers, like 89 divided by 55, you're going to come up with the 1.618, and basically 61.8% seems to be a very powerful universal ratio. Now, why it works so well in charts, I don't know. But here's a move that twice managed to retrace that 61.8% from this high down to this low, which means that as long as you can successfully hold it, it means that the move, which is from point A to point B, well, it has not failed. And if it's in this middle part in here, I consider that neutral. So today's move looks as if it wants to break the neutrality within it. Looking at this 18 average band, as you can see, it was declining and pretty much was going flat. Well, it's starting to break higher. Further momentum would make this thing move in towards an uptrend. What would be ideal is for further movement to the upside, maybe breaking in the 23 range, and then a pullback to this level here, which is set in at 22.21. So in a situation like that, let's just assume it goes up to 23.30, and then it pulls back, and then you break this resistance. At that point, you would be giving yourself reason for a multi-day bull market to come into form. So we'll see how this plays out. But today was just a break of that resistance. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to start a bull market, but the analysis shows that there's signs leading towards it. Okay, the silver analysis is now done. So now we're going to do some hockey handicapping. And what we're going to do is take a look at tomorrow's lines. This is for Wednesday. There's two games. Ottawa Senators going to Detroit to face the Red Wings, and the Boston Bruins going to Buffalo to take on the Buffalo Sabres. This is the money line, which is just who wins the game. Doesn't matter how it happens, if it's a 5-0 win, if it's an overtime, if it's in a shootout, it doesn't matter. And then the spread, well, Detroit's favored by 1.5 goals. They got to win by 2 or more to win. Ottawa, when you're plus 1.5, you either got to win or lose by exactly 1 goal. Then you have total, which is the combined points, in this case goals by both teams. This one's set at 5.5. This is at 5. So in understanding the prices, Ottawa is plus 125. This means you win 125 profit for every 100 you invest. If you were to bet on Detroit, you would have to invest 145 to win 100 profit. I like to determine the percentage odds. And to do this, for games with a plus symbol, like the Ottawa one, then what you do is you take the number and you add 1 to it. So 125 equals 225. If there was a line at plus 315, will be 4.15. So that one's very easy. Now for games with a negative symbol, like the Detroit Red Wings, what I do is I take price plus 100 and divide it by the price. So 245 divided by 145 is 1.689. When you take this, what you need to do is you take the reciprocal, which is just 1 divided by the number. So in this example here, we got Detroit minus 145, which is 1.689. That means they're saying 59.2%. In order for you to have an edge, you got to be confident that they have a much greater than a 59.2% shot of winning. If you take one of these big underdogs, let's say Detroit to win by 2, 195. So we take 2.95. We take the reciprocal of that, 33.9%. You basically got to be 36, 37, 38% sure that's going to happen and be good within your analysis to have an edge. So now let's take a look at it. I made a spreadsheet last week that does this very fast. I mean, I can handicap games extremely fast, which is what I'm going to do now. Ottawa and Detroit. Here's a spreadsheet that I made. It's got all the teams. You got Detroit here, which states the win-loss record, 6-4 with a 60% ranking. Then you got the WXL, which means how many times you win in regulation, how many times they go to overtime, how many times they lose in regulation. So Detroit wins half the time in regulation. They have won, they've lost 2/5 or 30% of the time they lose in regulation, and 20% they go to overtime. Got this in here, which means 20% of the time they win by 2 goals or more this season so far. And 70% of the time they have stayed within a goal. Then we have totals. And what this means is 70% of the time there's 5 goals or more in their games, 40% 6 goals or more, and 20% for Detroit. Now Now, as far as Ottawa's concerned, Ottawa's 4-4. They've won 38% of the games in regulation. They usually stay close 88% of the time. They win or lose by one. And a lot of these games are high scoring. You can see the percentages here. Now, there's also records I have for home and away in here, but still early on. So what we can do is take a look at, I got all the teams on the bottom. So within Detroit played on Monday. They played the San Jose Sharks and they lost 1-0. This number on here represents the overtime or not. So all I do within the spreadsheet is I put the scores in, and then the computer automatically does all the calculations for me. So Detroit loses to San Jose. Then they lost to Phoenix 5-2. So they've lost 2 consecutive games in a row. They beat the very tough Colorado Avalanche team 4-2. They beat Columbus 2-1. They beat Boston 3-2. So you can see a lot of the low-scoring games. Now, as far as Ottawa is concerned, well, they've won 3 consecutive games now. They beat Edmonton 3-1. They beat New Jersey 5-2. And they beat Phoenix 4-3. And that was after they lost 4 consecutive games. On the road, they played the first 6 games on the road, and they won 2 of them. So now when we look at the odds, you got to say to yourself, what's the chances that Detroit wins? And what's the chances the total is going to be 6 goals or more? Now, the one thing that helps out is knowing who the goalies are. So that's what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at the goalies. For Ottawa, you got Craig Anderson, their starting goalie, 312 minutes, a 2.88 goals against average this season. And in his career, he has been pretty okay. Robin Lehner, I don't know if I pronounced that right, the backup goalie, has played magnificently when he's played, and his career is pretty decent. It doesn't really matter to me who the starting goalie is when I see this. Detroit has already confirmed that Jimmy Howard will play this game. So far this season in 425 minutes, a 2.26 goals against average, 92.5% save percentage, and he's had a very decent career. So therefore, if we're looking at the over-under, what's the chances that the game goes under 5.5? Now, most games do go under that total. Now, Detroit, you can see in here, has played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games that have went under that total, where Ottawa, not as many. I think you'd have to pass that. I don't see any real value. I think that's more of a correct line. Now, as far as the chances of winning it, again, the odds have Detroit as a decent-sized favorite. I don't think there's a single play within that game. I think the bookies, as I call them, have made a correct line. Boston and Buffalo is the next game in Buffalo, and Boston are pretty decently sized favorite, and for good reason, too. If we look at Boston this year, Boston's 5-2, winning 71% of their games, all of them in regulation time. They have won by 2 goals or more than half the time, 57%, and they've only lost by 2 or more 14% of the time. There has been 57% of the time there's 5 goals or more, but there has yet to have been 6 goals or more. So most of the time there has been exactly 5 goals in a Boston game. Boston, who is on the road, they're 2-2 at home, which means they're 3-0 on the road. So I'm going to move this over here. And so on the road, Boston's 3-0, winning every single game in regulation. Games, of course, they're doing pretty well. Now, as far as Buffalo's concerned, they are on the worst team in the league right now. They've won 10% of their games. They're 1-9. They have yet to win a game by 2 goals or more, and 40% of the time they lose by 2 goals or more. Now, only 20% of the times have the games had 5 or 6 goals or more, so they play relatively low-scoring games. As far as the goalies are concerned, Tuukka Rask is played 417 minutes this year with a stellar 1.29 goals against average and has saved over 95% of his shots. Within a career that's had a decent amount of games, 2.10 goals against average, 92.8% save percentage, amazing. Now, if Chad Johnson plays, and he's due to play at some time, don't be surprised if this is his first game. In his career, 1.97 goals against average in 547 career minutes. Maybe he's a good goalie. For a while, Tuukka Rask was the backup to Tim Thomas, who now plays with Florida. For Buffalo, Ryan Miller is their number one goalie in 418 minutes this year. Has posted a really good save percentage, but a high goals against average. When you see that, you know the team has been allowing a lot of shots. That tells you that their defense is not that good. For his whole career, you can see his goals against average is lower than this, and his save percentage is also lower as well. Jonas Unroth this year has posted good numbers, but you can see maybe not quite as good as Miller, but it really doesn't make too much of a difference which of the two would start. So if you look at Boston this year, they beat Tampa 5-0. They beat Florida 3-2. They lose to Detroit 3-2. So they lost to a good team in a close battle. Of course, none of these games went to overtime. Boston beat Columbus 3-1. They lost to another good team in Colorado. They beat a very good Detroit team. They're 1-1 against them. And they also beat Tampa Bay. Now notice they allowed one goal. They allowed one. They allowed two. 1, 3, 2, and 0. They don't let many goals in whatsoever, which is a good reason why the total is at 5 and not 5.5. Looking at Buffalo now. Buffalo has played a lot of games. They lose to Colorado 4-2, scoring just twice. Vancouver, they 3-0. They lose. They beat the Islanders 4-3 on the road. Then they lose to the Wild 2-1. They're having a hard time scoring. They lose to Chicago 2-1. They score one goal against Columbus in a 4-1 loss. They scored 2 goals with Tampa, 1 goal here. They scored nothing here and 1 goal in here. So there's a very good chance that Boston is going to destroy them. Now, how I would think that this would be a good play is oftentimes you can get team totals. How many goals one team is favored on the over-under. So I think the only way of playing tomorrow might be taking the Buffalo Sabres to go under 2.5 goals. You'd have to pay a little bit for it because the price would be somewhere around minus 170. If you want to take a nice little shot, maybe go under 1.5, stating I think they're going to score 0 or 1 goals. That probably might be the best bet. Now, as far as this one here, how about Boston laying a goal and a half plus 170? Now, how confident do you have to be within that? Well, we take 2.7. We take the reciprocal, 37%. So I would like to be about 42% confident long run that Boston's going to win by 2. And when we go back in here, we can see Boston has won by 2 goals or more over half the time. Buffalo has lost by 2 goals or more 40% of the time. So I'd be about 45, 46% sure that Boston's going to win by 2. So I think the play tomorrow is to lay a goal and a half on the Boston Bruins. And thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye.